Hello, friends. In the last 2 days, I've given lessons to a US Air Force pilot, a family therapist, a Pilates instructor, and also a head professional, a PGA member. And each of those people are quite unique and interesting, very smart, good athletes. And I thought you might find it interesting to hear what we talk about on these lessons. My first lesson yesterday morning, 8 o'clock, it's a nice cool time of the day at this point in the year in Sacramento, was a first lesson with a referral and a pilot. Obviously a very smart man, a good athlete and disciplined. And the first thing that we did was to talk about why he was there. Well, he'd already texted me and said that he was mishitting his driver and that's what he wanted to work on. But then the specifics came up in that conversation, which is that he was hooking the ball. Now, hooking is a relatively rare thing. Most people, if they default wrong, they go to the right. So that was interesting. And so I invited him to hit a short iron, I think an 8-iron, and he hit one shot. And as is commonly the case after having done this for over 50 years, I really don't need to see a second one. And so I stopped him and I pointed out that the reason he was hooking was because he was quitting his turn very early, and because he's such a good athlete, carrying on just with the arms. And in fact, what I describe as counter-turning, because even while his arms are trying to go that way, his head and body were leaning toward the left in anticipation of attacking the ball. And he did it well, but it comes at a cost. And in his case, because he didn't make any other corrections, he was getting a big hook. Now that corrections thing is going to come back to us in a moment. So what I showed him was to stand in his normal fashion. He stood and gripped beautifully, and start the swing with a replica of a short wooden waggle. I described it as cleaning a little piece of a windshield with a windshield wiper blade. And so start with that, but as the club is passing, the hands are passing the right leg, to carry on with the thought, complete fiction, but the thought that the shoulders are going to turn 90 degrees before the club is above his waist. Again, fiction, but the idea is very valuable. And to tolerate that that might mean that the right eye, and he admitted he was right eye dominant, would not get a perfect look at the ball, because if you turn like that, your right eye, which we're always told keep your eye on the ball, and particularly with a wood with the ball farther left, it becomes an obstacle to turn. With his right eye dominating, it was stopping him from turning. So once he understood that, and I gave him Jack Nicklaus's famous tendency before he hits a ball, which is that just before he swung, he would turn his left ear toward the ball. And so those were the two things I asked him to do. 3 really. Start with a replica of the waggle, turn the shoulders all before you're above your waist, fiction, and do it having, before you swing back, just turned your left ear toward the ball a couple of seconds before you swing back. Not during the swing, but just before. And he immediately started hitting balls up into the air and in the right direction, but pushed off to the right and with a little fade. And of course, the reason is because any good athlete who has a regular error in their swing will adapt. And he was a lovely example of this. He had built in, intuitively, corrections for the hook just to get around the golf course with some dignity. And so he was going to hit block cuts, and I had luckily warned him that this was likely. And so the ultimate irony is that I actually had to have him slow down his swing, even go to a 7-iron off a high tee for a little while as a training device, and try to hit the ball high and to the left, the very place that he didn't want to go and that provoked him to come to a lesson. So once he understood that when he tried to go high left, because of now how he was forming his swing, he wasn't suddenly going to revert to the old problem and go whacking the ball in the left trees. He probably only did 2 of those in the remainder of the lesson. It was wonderful because among those shots where he was block cutting or working hard to go left but not quite making it, he hit several tee shots that just did exactly what you want them to do. Climb up on a perfect trajectory, go far, and maybe turn a yard or 2 to the left, what I call a climbing draw. So that was a good way to start the day.